So, going back to grade 10. SOHCAHTOA. We have a right angle triangle. This is our angle theta. You label everything off the angle theta. So the side that is directly across from it is called the opposite. The side right beside it is called the adjacent. And the longest side in the right angle triangle is called the hypotenuse. All right, so see what we remember, people. Sine theta is what side over what side? Opposite over hypotenuse. Oh, over there. Op over hype. Cosine is what side over what side? Adjacent over the hypotenuse. And tan is op over adjacent. Good job. Okay. Those are the first three trig ratios. Those are called the primary trig ratios. Yeah. You know what you can do? You can flip them all, which are called the reciprocal trig. Did everything just go downhill right there? It's not a good look. All right. So reciprocal means you just flip them. So 1 over sine is called the cosecant, which is abbreviated CSC. 1 over cosine is called the secant, SEC. And 1 over tan is called the cotan. I know. Now, if... Yeah. Yeah. Makes perfect sense. All right. So, I didn't make the rules. These are all on your green sheet. If you take out your green sheet, the right-hand side at the top, all these are up there. I'll have to print one off for you, but yeah. I'll have to print one off, yes. All right. So, sine is what side over what side? Op over hype. So when you take the reciprocal, it's 1 over the op over hype, which turns it into hype over op. What's cosine?
Hype over adjacent.
Yeah, so it's going to be adjacent over the hypotenuse. So when you flip it, it's hypotenuse over the adjacent. And tan is op over adjacent, so it becomes adjacent over the opposite. All right. I don't even remember these, but if you want to, you can. As long as you know those, you can figure it out. All right. Yeah, I just remember the reciprocals, and then you just flip your answer, basically. I don't remember any of that stuff. Okay. So yesterday we learned that everything that we're going to look at is on an XY plane. So from trig from now on, they don't usually write op over hype, although I still use that or remember it. A lot of times, I kind of go back and forth, is they use X and Y coordinates, all right? Because this point here has an X coordinate and a Y coordinate. So they use X and Y coordinates. So if I'm talking about sine theta of this angle, it's what side over what side?
Y over R.
Y over R. What is cosine going to be? X over R, because that's the adjacent, right? This is the adjacent, op, and there's your height. So it's going to be X over R. And tan is going to be?
Y over X.
Y over X. What are the reciprocals going to be? Just flip them. Cosecant, which is 1 over sine, is R over Y. Secant, which is 1 over cosine, is R over X. And cotan is going to be X over Y. They talk about this. You should memorize these formulas. No, you shouldn't. Don't. Do not memorize them. I mean, look, if you want to memorize them, I don't memorize those. I know what I remember. SOHCAHTOA, and then I just figure everything else out. Yeah. Okay. Students like to use the phrase 7 yellow rabbit. No, don't do that.
7 yellow rabbits.
No, we're not doing that. Okay. Sine is equal to y over r. Right? Sine is equal to 7 yellow rabbits. That would confuse me. I think if you like that, be my guest. Look. I didn't. I don't. I'm not telling you to remember it, unless you really want to. All right, flipping the page. All right. I'm only going to go through one of these. What quadrant do you want to do? I heard 2 first. Sorry. I'm going with 2. Okay. Because one's boring and doesn't really teach you anything. All right. Quadrant 2. In quadrant 2, what is the negative value? X or Y? X. So you're going to have a negative X here. And I don't know why they don't do negative, but I'm just going to put a negative in front of the X. And the Y will be positive because you go up. Okay. Sine, and we're talking about this angle right here, theta. Sine is what over what? Y over R. Y is positive. R is always positive. Okay? And the reason R is always positive is because how would you get R? Well, that's a right angle triangle, so you would do x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared, right? Correct? And you're squaring everything, so the r always has to be positive.
How is x negative in the first place anyways when it's a distance?
Yeah, but you're on an xy plane, right? It's telling you the coordinates of where you
But
went.
like theoretically, if this was a real triangle, then you can't have a negative.
Yeah, but it's not a triangle that we're talking about. We're talking about a rotation to there. And because that's on an xy plane, that point has an xy coordinate.
Okay.
All right?
So that equation though, like, wouldn't it have to be a plus minus, like you have x and y, something squared plus something squared, add both of those together, and then to get all you'd have to read that, which would make it a plus minus.
That goes to what Talia was saying. You're going to see next week, this is the radius of a circle. And you can't have a negative radius, which is what Talia was saying. All right. Okay. Okay, so sine in the second quadrant is always positive. Cosine is what over what?
X over R.
X over R. Now our x is negative, right? And we know r is always positive. So cosine is going to be what in this quadrant? Negative, because it's a negative divided by a positive. So cosine will be negative in the second quadrant. Tan is what over what?
Y over negative x.
Y over negative x. So what's tan in the quadrant? Negative. Now you can go through and do this on every one. Okay? And they have different, in the second quadrant, only sine is positive, cosine and tan are negative. All right? And then following the same procedure, if you're in this third quadrant, is x positive or negative? You know, we're just going to do third quadrant. And what's y?
Also negative.
Okay, so sine is what side over what side?
Y over R.
Y over r. So is that positive or negative?
Negative.
No. R is positive, but y is negative, right? Cosine is what over what?
X over R.
So that's going to be negative x over r, so it's negative. Tan?
Y over X.
Negative y over negative x, so it's positive. So in the third quadrant, only tan is positive. So let's see if we can figure this out. In the second quadrant, only sine was positive. In the third quadrant, only tan was positive. What's going to be positive in the fourth quadrant? Cosine. And cosine is going to have an x and a negative y. Cosine is going to be x over r, which gives you positive. Sine is going to be negative y over r, which is negative, and tan is going to be negative y over x, which is negative. So there you go, cosine. What about the first quadrant? Everything's positive, right? Because both x and y are positive, so they're all positive. All right, these are important. Where are they positive and negative? But I don't expect you to remember it, like remember all this stuff. There's a trick. It's called the cast rule. All you really need to remember is add sugar to coffee. Or invent your own. But you always start in the first quadrant. Add. All ratios are positive. They just went like this. Because Azteca rule doesn't make sense.
Oh, it's like those old English movies. They're like coffee.
That's like Yoda speak.
Exactly.
All right. S, sugar. Sine is positive in the second quadrant. 2, tan is positive in the third quadrant. And coffee, cosine is positive in the fourth quadrant. You need to remember that. Add sugar to coffee, or you can invent your own. I don't care. Don't tell me, because I don't want to hear what you invent. All right? Add sugar to coffee starting in the first quadrant. This is actually really important. You need to remember that. All right. Okay, here we go. So tell me if these are going to be positive or negative. Sine of 280. What quadrant do you finish in if you're at 280 degrees?
The fourth one?
Boom, you're at the fourth quadrant, right? Is sine positive or negative in that quadrant? It's negative, so the answer will be negative. If you punch sine 280 into your calculator, you will get a negative number. I don't care what that number is. You will get a negative number. All right. It says minus VE. That's my negative. I know, I got weird notation. You can just put minus or negative. I'm going to put a minus because minus is an operation. All right. B. So B is in rads. Just convert it to degrees. What is pi over 6? That's 30. What's 7 times 30? 210. So this is the same as, it's essentially saying, what is tan of 210? What quadrant is 210 in? Third quadrant. Is tan positive or negative in the third quadrant? It's positive. Add sugar to coffee. So it's positive. All right. C, pi over 3. What's pi over 3? 60. I have 10 60-degree angles. So what's my angle? 600. Can't write 600. What quadrant am I in if I do 600-degree rotation? There's 360. 180. Boom. I'm in the third quadrant. All right. Is cosine positive or negative in this quadrant? Negative. So the answer is negative. All right. What's CSC? That's 1 over sine. Exactly. Not inverse. Don't say inverse. Sorry, inverse is totally different. Yeah. You'll learn that in calculus. You say cosecant. Cosecant. This is the cosecant angle, which is 1 over sine. Okay? So you really have to just think about sine. Negative 225. What quadrant am I in? Second, because we went in the negative direction, right? So we're there. Is sine positive or negative in this quadrant? Positive. Therefore, 1 over sine will be? Is it positive or negative? It's positive, because just because you take the reciprocal doesn't change the sign. All right, what's COT? That's 1 over tan of this gong show. So let's just look at what's pi over 6? 30. What's 13 30-degree angles? That's 390. So it's negative 390. What quadrant are you in? You go all the way around in the negative direction. Boom. So you're in the 4th quadrant. Is tan positive or negative in this quadrant? Negative? All right, you are correct. And secant of 1,000. What's secant? 1 over cos. What quadrant are you in if you go 1,000 times or 1,000-degree rotation? 4. That's pretty good math there, right? Don't you like math when you just draw little circly whoops? They're like shells, exactly. It's a Fibonacci sequence. Is this positive or negative in this quadrant? Positive. All right. Do we have calculators, people?
Yeah.
Scientific ones?
Yeah.
I know. Do I just get to choose?
So we get into the, this is where they get to spend one class screwing up because it's in degrees and the other class
That's what we're
screwing
about to
up
do
'cause
right
it's in
now.
radians.
This is what we're about to do right now.
I told them about this. The calculator gremlins get in there and switch just before a
Exactly.
test.
Now it actually, you can't just put it in degree mode and just be
5
done with it.
questions in, they've got none of them right, and they're panicking. The tears are starting to well up.
See? This is
And
all
then
the
they go,
fun stuff.
Oh, it's just in degrees. There we go. It works.
Thanks, Sean. Or Mr. Pell. All right, here we go. You got your calculators out?
Yeah.
All right, peoples. All right. Now, what Mr. Pell said is actually important. All right? Not the tears. Not the tears. We don't want any tears. Well, maybe a few tears. All right. If it says it is in degrees, you have to be in degree mode in your calculator. Okay? If it's in rads, you got to be in rad mode. However, you can always just convert the rads to degrees and then put it in your calculator. Okay. Well, and label 1 degrees and 1 rads. You can do that if you want to. All right. Sine 280, is that degrees or rads? Degrees, because it's got the degree symbol. What is sine 280? I actually want the decimal this time. Negative 0.9848. They want us to go to 4 decimals. I don't really care. All right. Second one. Now, we'll do it in rads just to make sure that you know how to get your calculator into rad mode. Tan of 7 pi over 6. If you're entering this, you have to be in rads. If you're entering 210, you have to be in degrees. How do you change your mode? Who doesn't know how to change the mode? Whoa. Okay. Let's stop the video. Okay. What's cosine of 10 pi over 3? Negative 0.5. What is sine of 90? Is that rads or degrees? It's rads. Why isn't rads? Because there's no degree sign. And the answer is? 0.89. Hold on. You'd have to convert 90 rads to degrees, which is massive. 90 radians is huge.
Could you make that first? Could you make that?
Yeah, you can multiply by pi over 180.
Okay, but you can do something like.
Hey, no, we're going from rads to degrees. You're going to multiply by 180 over pi. Sorry. It's not 90 degrees. It's 90 radians. So it's a massive number. All right. Cotan of negative 13 pi over 6. If you're doing the reciprocal ones, just do 1 over, so do tan of negative 13 pi over 6. And then you should have a 1 over button. Something that looks like that, 1 over x. Most calculators do.
You can then just do
X to the power of negative 1 is the same thing.
Oh, I have that.
Or you can just take your answer and actually do 1 over that. But
You can just do 1 divided by
yeah, yeah. Oh, same thing, but faster. Saves you a button.
Yeah.
What? Yeah, that adds up when you're doing hundreds of millions of buttons. Unless you convert it to degrees. Negative 1.7321. What? Okay, well, I'll come help you in a sec. All right. I want everyone to do questions 1 to 3, please. And then you got like 5 minutes, sorry.